Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Moni's podcast. I am your girl, Moni, and today we are talking about a story about rising up from rough beginnings and stepping boldly into purpose. Did you know that Black youth in neighborhoods like Jane and Finch, as they say, Jane and Finch, face some of the highest dropout rates and lowest access to opportunities in Toronto? But people like my guest today are rewriting that narrative, proving that resilience is louder than statistics. From publishing 3 impactful books to inspiring youth across schools and churches, his story and his journey shows us that the place you start from doesn't have to be the place you finish. My guest today, he's an author, speaker, and changemaker who was born and raised in Toronto's Jane and Finch community. An era, often misunderstood and labeled for its struggles with poverty, gun violence, and systematic neglect. With poverty and so forth. But despite the odds, he didn't just survive it, he transformed it into fuel for his mission. Please help me welcome my guest today, Mr. Nelly James. Nelly, how you doing? All right, so Nelly, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. The weather's great, so I'm great.
All right, welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's get into it. My topic today, I want to talk about from Ghetto Yute to the great man, and I felt you fit that description, not only because of where you're from, Jane and Finch, but because of your story and how you're able to persevere and accomplish so much, So tell me a little bit, let the people know exactly in a nutshell, who is Nelly? Just in a little short in it.
Nelly is a person who thrived for greatness even when I was in the belly of the beast.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I was a person who grew up in a real dysfunctional household, which led me to be a very dysfunctional person and a person who people did not want to really interact with because I was a ball of negativity.
Yeah.
But now, on the flip side, going through what I've been through, I use all the negative energy and translated it into a positive source.
You see how we did that? Positive source. So we're going to get into some of that. It's going to get deep. I really want to show people that despite their challenges and going through such, as you say, a negative patch, you can use that and fuel it into something great. So let's go on the journey. What's one memory from your childhood in Jane and Finch that really just sticks with you? Was there anything that,
Man, I remember the first time I saw a dead body in the staircase.
Oh, wow.
I could never forget because I ran around and I went the other way.
Yeah.
I remember I went upstairs and I'm like, man, there's a dead body in the staircase. And it was just like...
How old were you? Were you young?
I was young. I was about 10 years old. And I saw that. It was pretty traumatic. So after that, like, seeing a dead person.
Yeah, that memory just...
Yeah.
And that as a 10-year-old kid, that must have been, like, frightening. You just kind of felt like, okay, what is happening right now?
And what do you do as well?
Yeah.
But can't do it.
No. Was there ever a moment where you felt like giving up, as you grew older? Was there ever a time when you're just like, yeah?
Right from the beginning. From I was 9 years old, I wanted to give up. From so young, just because of all the trials and tribulations that I was facing at such a young age. So at that young, tender age, I was already smoking already.
At 9?
At 9.
Okay, what you're saying?
I was already smoking to get rid of some of the stuff
that was your outlet. Yes, yeah.
And I was exposed to it so young already. I knew some of the older guys from there, and which one of them were one of my best friends. And yeah, that's how I dealt with that.
So when you hear people when people say Jane and Finch, do you feel it has like a negative stigma attached to it when they're like, oh, Jane and Finch are bad, like, oh, people always say Jane and Finch. Does that make you feel, or do you feel it has a negative touch with it?
Yeah, I do believe that. Whenever people, even now, people still say Jane and Finch to the side of their mouth.
Yeah.
So, but I want to try to change that stigma.
Yes.
Right? And that's why as well, I'm doing an event called Greatness out of Jane and Finch.
Ooh, nice.
Actually, I believe it's next week.
Okay.
Thursday. So, it's just...
All right. That sounds good. Yeah.
Just to push more positivity throughout.
In the community.
Yeah.
I love that. We'll have to put the information about that event at the bottom for those of you guys who are interested. What kept you grounded as you transitioned out of that environment?
Okay. What kept me grounded is I had a few people literally a few people I could talk to. So I had one church pastor one time that I was able to talk to about anything. He gave me his number and we were able to talk. Sometimes he would come to my house and pick me up when we go to like dinner or something.
Yeah.
We could discuss. And then he got me to be more grounded in, before my dad left, he kind of instilled God in our life.
Yes.
He brought us to church. So that was there.
Yes.
But when this pastor came into my life as well, he kind of reiterated that and stamped it in my life.
That's good. You see, that's important, how to have another, I guess, male figure. Did you kind of look at him as another male figure?
Yeah, like a mentor.
Mentor. Because you kind of touched on when your father left. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I will. So my dad was, when I was growing up, I always saw my dad as like the guy who will hold me down when things are going wrong, type of thing. Between me and my other siblings and my mother, right? Because we never had the greatest relationship.
Yeah.
So whenever she was going a bit, he was there to step in and be like, okay.
Almost like the calm through the storms. Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when he left, then, that's where my mind started to wander a little bit. Okay, what am I going to do now? And that's where I started to go into the wrong crowds and started doing some of the stuff that I was taking part.
See, the importance of having a male figure in the family homes. And I hear a lot about families and people that grew up in the Jane and Finch community, that it's almost like the ghetto area of Canada.
Right.
And people that live there or people that come out of there, they're not on the same level as everybody else.
Yeah.
As you say, it's the stigma.
Yes.
Touch on that a little bit for me, because that's not the case,
No, it's not the case. As a matter of fact, so many great people come out of
Jane and Finch, yeah.
But because of, the fewer bad apples that are out there, we all get cast into that one box of, oh my gosh, you're from Jane and Finch. We don't want to hear what you have to say no more. We don't want you to come to this job no more, So that's the whole reason why I try my best to get out there so that I can change that whole stigma, that whole idea change.
And you're definitely doing that, with your book. Your first book is called Change is Coming.
Yes,
what was changing in you when you wrote that?
What was changing in me was my emotions, that's for sure. Because you won't see it now, but I was a fireball. I was talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
Like I had a really bad temper, and that was only because I had some inner trauma that I was dealing with within myself, and I couldn't contain it, and I didn't have no one to really go to talk about it per se.
Yeah.
And sometimes even when you're going through some of the deep traumas, like even if you have one or two people you can talk to, there's certain things that you just don't want to speak about.
Exactly.
And that's what bothers inside of you.
You tell them a little bit, you're like,
yeah,
can't have that part of it. Yeah.
So you just retain your routine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you just burst.
And you found like writing was like therapeutic.
That was my therapy.
Yeah. So you were able to.
Every time I wrote, it was like a release.
And that's true. That I find that for myself as well. Just writing like poetry or journaling, just releasing what I'm going through, putting it on paper, just kind of helps me feel better. So that change is coming for you to be able to, express what you went through at the time. As you say, you were a little fireball and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So get that book as well, people. Change is coming. Of the 3 books that you've written, 3 books.
Yes.
Which one is the most personal and why?
Change is coming is the most personal. And the reason why that's the most personal is because I run into some real depth about my life in that book. From a childhood, I talked about church, talked about growing up in a dysfunctional household with one parent in the household. Spoke a little about my school experiences as well, because I was never a student. The only time when I got an A is when I was like in grade 11 onward.
Yes.
Right. So, it's so personal. I want to let people know that even if you weren't doing great in school, you can still come out and be something great, right? And just because you're not doing great in school doesn't mean that in primary school or high school doesn't mean that you can't excel outside of that in secondary school, which I did.
So with the dysfunctional aspect of it, you said growing up in a family that was a little dysfunction. Give us a little synopsis of what some of those dysfunctional elements were.
Within my household, at least for me, things felt really cold.
Okay.
So regular households, which I found was really strange, you walk in and it's hello, good morning, how's your day? I never
get that. Yes.
So when I walk into a house now, my friend's house or something, like, oh, hello, how are you? I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
And wait, and is this a black friend or a white friend?
This is a black friend.
Okay. I just had to say that because I find it's different with a black family, white family, how the interaction is. So I'm glad you touched on that. All right. Yeah. So you go to the black friend now and then say,
how's it going?
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow.
We don't get this.
Yeah. I was confused. It felt odd and strange to me.
Yeah.
And then obviously when I go places now and I see where they have, it was common, I guess, more common in the black community where, the father's gone.
Yeah.
But when I go into houses that I see have both mother and father, it was a little bit strange for me. And sometimes I would go in there and I feel a little bit of sadness because I'd be like, oh man, I wish that wasn't the case, right? And another form of dysfunction was a lot of verbal abuse that went on just towards me. With my mom and my some of my younger sisters, older brother, like it was like I was the black sheep in the family taking the attacks.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful a lot of that changed.
Yes.
And that's why I do what I do now to motivate.
You see, and I'm pretty sure some of our listeners can relate to that growing up in, is it a Caribbean background or Caribbean Jamaican background? You see, that I don't want to say it's something that happens a lot, but you see it.
Yes.
In those households, especially where the father is absent, it's just the mom raising the family. It's very quiet when you enter. Sometimes you don't get that. How are you doing? Or hey, have a good day at school today. Have a good day. It's very non-communication, and sometimes that is communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Not saying anything. That is a language that's being, spoken to you.
Yeah.
And so for you to go through that, how old did you say that continued until there was a shift and you're like, all right, this is how it should be?
You know what? And that changed like most recently.
Really?
That changed probably when I got to at least maybe
adulthood.
Adulthood. So when I was 30 now, so 25, I'll say that changed. 26. When it was like, oh, good afternoon, or oh, let's ride in the car together.
Yeah.
All that type of stuff was weird.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it took that long, and what do you think caused that change to slowly happened?
I
Or did
guess
they go saw your work, or they're like,
Yeah.
or time? Yeah.
that too, time, and they saw what I was doing. So they saw that I was doing something positive in the community. They saw some of the book signs out. I remember I had a book signing at Yorkdale, and it's one of the first times when I actually felt like a warmness in my heart. Because I saw where my mom came out, and one of my younger sisters came out,
Yes.
grandma came out, and they saw the people that are there supporting me, and that was the most memorable moment I think I ever shared in my life.
Oh, that's good. I like to see that transition, that they were able to recognize that maybe we are affecting, some of his emotions and some of his outlets. Let's try to change and be more positive.
Yes.
Be a positive support.
Yeah.
And for it to take that long to change, I do agree that I believe it is time.
Yeah, it is.
It's society and how people see the differences in other communities and different households, and they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me just shift gears a little, something change. That's really good. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that that's happened, because you need that,
For sure. Hands down.
Oh my gosh. You definitely need. If someone picked up one of your books and they read only one page, which one do you hope they land on? Like, out of any of your books, when they just skim through it and you just hope they land on a page that you're like,
Okay.
that will resonate with you and speak to you.
You know what? There's one inside there. There's one chapter that says God. And the reason why I would land into that chapter is because what I learned in this life, especially how it is right now, if you don't have God, you don't have one thing. And the more you lean on God is the more I feel like you have more understanding
Yes,
of what goes on in your life. So now when you're going through certain trials and tribulations, you're not seeing it as what it is.
Yes.
As a lesson to go forward.
God. And his hand, you've seen his hand in your life. See? I can attest to that as well. You feel he's guided you.
Yes.
Especially from the community. Every time when we see the news and we hear Jane and Finch, we always run into the TV and be like, oh my gosh, because we know so much people that live in those areas, and it's almost like a survival.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Even my nephew and my friends, I have people that are associated with that area. So when you think of Jane and Finch, you have to think God has his hand in there, and it's not always going to be like that. Eventually you will rise, overcome, and transition into something great. And that's why I'm excited to talk to you, because you're like a living example of that.
Thank you.
You're doing really good. Really, really proud of you. In terms of your speaking engagements, your vision, how do you prepare your heart and mind before speaking to an audience?
So what I do is I do little pep talks to myself.
To yourselves, yeah.
Just to motivate myself first. Like, especially if I had we all have bad days.
Yeah.
So if I'm having a not so great day, I'll talk to myself. That sounds crazy, but I'll talk to myself.
I do it too.
I'll talk to God, as I said, to be like, okay, I'm about to talk to this.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Lead me.
Do your thing.
Yeah.
So that's how I.
Ain't nothing wrong with it. I do it in the car before I come out and step on the stage. Who's supposed to hear this? Lead me to that person. And he always comes through.
True.
You find after you do a talk, people come to pull you to the side and be like, hey, your story really resonated with me, man.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great. Because I actually had a engagement like that a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it was a workshop. And it was with the younger kids, 15, 14 and stuff. So I remember when I gave my speech, there's a girl who was in the audience kind of just looking at me, and I kind of knew that she was going through something, right? And afterwards she came and she's like, your story resonated with me. I also lost someone in my life, and she's currently dealing with the trauma and this and that. And give her a few words of encouragement.
Yeah, yeah.
And she felt a lot better. And her feeling a lot better made me feel a lot better.
Yeah. It's always amazing how those ones always come up after. And it just makes it worth it, what you're doing. You just never know who you're saving.
Yeah.
Or who needs to hear that word. So when they come to you afterwards and they just say,
Yes.
you know, you just kind of feel like, that even if sometimes you don't do these events to get paid or, you know, mine is always just who needs to hear
Exactly.
that story, that word. So
Yeah.
that's really good. That's really good encouragement. What do you want youth who feel hopeless to hear from you today in our episode?
I want them to know that where you are right now is not where you have to stay. But it's just gonna take maybe a lot of hard work and rewiring your thoughts and probably your daily activities and creating a routine for yourself to destine yourself for greatness.
I love that word, rewiring your thoughts.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like a nice title for a poem. Rewiring your thoughts, because ultimately that's what it comes down to, your thoughts.
Yes.
You know, whatever you think, you kind of just put it out there in the universe. So change your thinking and just you'll be able to change your world. I love that. I hope you guys can tap into that and take that from today's episode. So what's next for you, Nelly? Like, what are your dreams? What are you dreaming about right now? Next steps?
So for me, what I plan to do is, this is crazy, but I think it's doable. What I want to do one day is I want to do a show where I sell out the Rogers Center.
Oh, shoot. Claim it. Put it in the atmosphere.
Yes.
We're putting it out there.
I need everybody in the Rogers Center motivated.
Oh, wow.
That's what I need.
No.
But besides that idea, I always had the idea of also creating a community center. Right? So what this community center would be like is it would have 2 sections in it. So one is a musical section because that's one thing that I feel like grounded me and kept me on a certain path.
A certain path, yeah.
And what I see nowadays, most of these kids nowadays, they love music as well.
Yes.
Right? And the opposite side of that, in the same building, I would have a place where they can seek counseling or help or business grants if they're thinking about starting a business, somebody they could talk to and so forth.
Yes.
You know, so that's one of the bigger goals that I have.
I love that. I don't really see much of that right now in the community, especially would that be in the area that you're
area.
Yeah, Jane and Finch. That would be really good to have that, especially for the youth, a place where they can go, as you say, to help with resume building, interview skills. What really sparks you to do something like that? I know it's not really a lack, but to want to do a community center in Jane and Finch, that speaks volumes because, let's be real, there's not a lot of those right now.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
and that's one of the reasons
why you want to do that, eh?
Why?
It's personable.
It's personable. Exactly, because everything that I do, I picture the people in Jane and Finch as what I was when I was younger.
Yes, yes.
Right? So anytime I see someone maybe getting into some trouble or whatnot, like I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at some of the guys that I used to have, right? And then that pushes me to my dreams so that I can help out these people a lot more.
Yeah. So the title of my episode is From Ghetto Yute to Great Man. I want to touch a little bit more on the Ghetto Youth side, you know. With that area, growing up in Jane and Finch, is there a situation, you mentioned the dead body that you saw, maybe growing up with the wrong crowd, that you had a near to death experience in that community that you can share with us?
Man,
you have too much. Big one.
There's one when I guess I was at the wrong place at the wrong
Please,
time.
wrong time.
I was with one of my friends, and you know he has stuff on it, right? And so, and he's one of those guys who are very he can be a little flashy.
Okay, yeah.
So one time we're inside of a neighborhood, and we're walking down the street, and these cars are racing down the street, but then they started reversing back.
Okay, yes.
So on the opposite side of us, there's some houses, but there's a fence that you have to cross over. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, these guys must be coming from him. so let me see if I can hop the fence. But before I did that, they already pulled out with guns already.
Oh, boy.
So I threw some stuff over the fence. I threw my car keys over the fence.
Everything,
and
yeah.
threw like one chain I had over the fence. And then he had his hands up. So all of them were on him at first. About 4 of them.
Oh, man.
And then I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, maybe what I could do is run. I go get the car and come
back for him. Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh my gosh, man. So then the guy came to me now, and he's bracing the gun on my chest.
Yeah.
Right? And he's ordering me to give him what I have.
What you have.
Right? But thankfully, I didn't have much.
Because you're going to kind of throw everything over. Yeah.
So he was a little bit frustrated.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm looking at this guy and I'm seeing a kid. Yeah. Because he has it on me, but he's trembling.
He doesn't want to, yeah.
So, just a little bit of intuitive thought I had. I'm like, okay, maybe I could pull a James Bond. Take the gun
and just
but I'm like, okay, you know what, let me just
it's almost like a life and death situation. I don't know if the gun loaded or anything like that.
Exactly. And then the guy was on my friend, he's a little bit crazy. So I'm like, okay. And that's one of the near-death experiences. He got his chain, took it
from him, yeah.
And then they drove off, and that was that, right? But I'll never forget the look in that guy's face, because I was very upset too, because I said I had a bad temper, but I didn't want my temper to get me in a space where I died because of it. So I was there, I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he's like, oh, empty your pockets and all this stuff, and I'm just like, Lord Jesus.
Yeah, not today.
Right, so that's just one of
the events that, and we hear a lot about situations like that in the area. I'm so thankful that you weren't hurt. They didn't even shot you and ran off.
Exactly. Because funny enough, the next day I heard that they did shoot somebody at Young and Dundas.
Wow.
So
you see. And how long ago was this, would you say?
This was a while ago now.
Right.
Maybe, how old was I? About 21. So good years ago. So.
And when you do your talks to young youth, you ever picture that man who you said had the gun on you and he was just shaking, just to change a life and have somebody who's living like that walk away and step out of those situations,
Yeah, I do picture some of these guys as that guy, because even when I went to go speak at an event in Falstaff, it was called Barbershop Talk. So Barbershop Talk is a thing that we have going on there.
Yes.
So see you at the church as well.
Yes.
And I remember I was speaking to some of these youth, and they're saying, oh, whatever I want to do, I just do it because I want to, or so forth. So I'm like, okay, so wouldn't you rather listen to somebody tell you that, okay, there's fire over there, don't walk through it?
Yes.
Then you rather walk through it and burn up. It's like, I'd rather walk through it and burn, because they wanna feel wanna know.
So self.
Like, okay, that's where most of their minds are thinking.
Yeah.
So their risk ratio and the reality ratio is really, really thin.
Really thin. Wow. And some of these talks that you do, you take a look at the audience, you see the majority of who you're speaking to. What does that look like? Is it majority people that look like you?
You know what? I had a really unique speaking engagement back in February in a place called Timmins.
Yes, Timmins, yes.
And that was a unique experience because they asked me to speak about gun violence, and then the other people they were speaking about like, sex trafficking.
Okay,
like that, right?
okay.
So in that audience, it felt a little, a little strange just because it's just not much people like me there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? But I felt like I was in the right.
Yes.
Because at the same time, I have a message to get across, and they probably need to hear it. That's why they invited me, right? But that's one thing that I found to be really unique. Just the energy there. The energy was so great, though. They're welcoming and very accommodating as well. And I believe I left a mark there.
That's good, and that's what we want to do. You want to leave a mark. And for those of you guys listening right now, I really hope this episode touches you, especially the young youth who may feel they're living in a negative environment or there's no way out. I want you guys to be able to draw from some of the messages that you're hearing and, as he said, rewire. It comes down to your thoughts, what you're thinking, and your actions, your crowd, your circle. We have to change that first, then we can just work on you evolving. So definitely want to start there. I want to get into a little bit of the fun and personal side of Nelly.
Yes.
Who's currently on your playlist? You know, any artists or songs that lift you up or speak to your journey?
So you know who my guy is?
Tell them who your guy is.
Fireman. That's
Fireman. Okay.
That's my guy. One of my favorite songs to listen to is Critics. I don't know if you know that one.
Oh, you know.
But that's one of my songs. And then Sizzler as well.
Yes.
Good Ways.
Yes.
One of my songs as well.
Okay.
And a little Drake and Rick Ross and stuff sprinkled in there.
On your playlist. Okay. See, a little bit of mixing it up a bit.
Yeah.
What's your relationship like with your mom today? What would you say that's like?
You know what? That grew tremendously. Right? From us not having, from us exchanging a lot of words. But with me saying nothing, her saying a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
to us not really communicating at all. To us now having conversations or speaking about random things or riding the car together and stuff like that. So it came a long way. It got tremendously better.
That's good, eh? That's like a good feeling. Man, because I see situations too from people growing up in these households that the conversation is not good, or they kind of label their parents like, well, you know how my mom say, you know how my dad is, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you're like, but that's from 19 oh long, they don't change yet.
Yeah.
And for you to say your mom came from such a negative, you know, the verbal abuse and how she saw that it affected you, and now it's just like, oh, you have an event today? Okay, what time? I'll be there. Or, you know, do you want to ride together today? Or how are you doing? Morning. It just feels good.
Yeah, it's different.
It's a really good feeling, right?
Yeah.
I'm happy for you. I'm really, you can see that it affects how you produce.
Yeah.
It affects what you put out there.
Yeah.
We need more of that. Definitely need more of that. So if you're in a household, an environment where the communication is not so good, I want to encourage you to take that first step, even if it's going to be hard. Just approaching, if it's your mom or your dad, and just initiating that conversation.
So it's funny that you talk about initiation, because that's what I had to do with my mom. Asked her why she was always so negative, or she always had something negative to say towards me, right? And obviously she was a bit frightened, so she didn't have the words to say anything to me,
Yeah.
right? But from that time going forward, I would say that things changed. So I guess she did think about it, because it never happened since.
You see, and sometimes that's all you need. I think maybe that night she kind of just reflected and said, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
Why do I always say the negative things to him? Maybe I should look at some of the things that he's doing that's positive and highlight that. And then it just changed after that.
Yeah.
You think if you'd ever spoke up or said anything, it probably would have been...
It probably would have been the same.
Been the same, eh?
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. But I feel like if you, sometimes you have to walk into the change, right? You gotta just finish. Yeah.
I'm glad you spoke up, and sometimes that's what we need.
Yeah.
You have to use your voice and speak up in certain situations.
Yeah.
Summer is around the corner. We feel like it's coming. What's your summer 2025 looking like? You know, any goals? You're traveling or rests planned?
Well, the first thing is trip to Jamaica.
All right. That sounds good.
Yes, that's the first thing. So I can't wait to, drink some of the juice out.
Pina colada.
Sorrow, stuff like that. I just have a nice time.
You go home often? You go back to Jamaica often?
I try to go every year, if not every year, every other year.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so it's gonna be a trip of relaxation, or
Yeah.
you by yourself or with like family?
So I'm taking my grandma down too.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. That should be fun.
Yeah.
Looking back with young Nelly, if you could see young Nelly, what would you say to him? Looking back now, little words of advice for young Nelly.
For young Nelly, I'll tell him, keep going through, because that's what's gonna make you you.
Use that to our listeners as well. Keep on going. Don't stop.
Yeah.
Just continue. As we say, there's light at the end of that dark tunnel. You just never know what's on the other side. So keep on pushing. When you're not writing or speaking, what brings you joy or makes you laugh,
A nice movie or a nice show, or simply just a nice, people always laugh at this, but a nice midnight drive down the Gardner at about 12 a.m. with the rain coming down.
That's the time when not a lot
of people, and it's so relaxing. Sometimes you don't even use the wiper blades. You just let it just roll up.
roll down, eh?
That's it.
In those moments, you just kind of reflect and just...
Exactly, right? But I find enjoying that. But other than that, playing the bass guitar.
Yes.
That's what I play as well. So playing that gives me such a happy thing.
Oh, that's good. You do that with your church or your...
I love my church too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. If your life was a movie, what would it be called and who's playing you? Got a little Michael B. Jordan up there. I don't know who's playing you.
I'd call it The Rise to Greatness. The Rise to Greatness. And you know what? I might have to add Michael B. Jordan in there for sure.
Is you? Oh, the actor that plays.
Either him or oh my gosh, I can't remember the other guy.
What movie is he in? Or
a
little highlight of who we can think that is. What was he?
That guy from Top Boy?
Yes.
Yeah, the dark skin.
Yes, I can't remember his name, but I know he has that. He's British. The London.
Yeah.
He has an accent. I know who you're thinking. Yes, he would play you.
Yes.
That's a really great title. It's so fitting. It summarizes where you're coming from, what you've been through, and where you are today. So very, very good. Well, before we part with our listeners, there's a segment of my show that I call Good Things Are Coming. It's a short, intentional pause where, we lift our hearts to promises of brighter days ahead. I want my listeners to think of it as a weekly reminder that no matter where you are or what you're facing, there's a spark of hope ready to light your path. So lean in, take a deep breath, and let's welcome in those blessings today. So I'm going to allow you to do a good things are coming ... I'm going to let them know mine, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to say yours.
Okay.
So good things are coming because your broken beginning is not your final chapter. You were never meant to stay stuck in survival mode.
Yes.
You were built to rise, rebuild, and redefine what greatness looks like. So once again, good things are coming because your broken beginning is not your final chapter. All right, drop a little something for them. Good things are coming because, and then just you can add a positive affirmation or something that resonates with you that you want them to hold on for that week.
Okay. Good things are coming to you because goodness simply looks good on you.
Oh. What? Two snaps. Love that. Good things are coming. So just repeat on those affirmations throughout the week. Thank you so much, Nelly, for sharing your heart, your honesty, and your hope with us today. Your journey from Ghetto Yute to great man reminds us that no label can limit purpose.
Yes.
And no environment can silence destiny. To everyone listening, you are not your past. Your pain has purpose. And if you keep showing up, keep healing, and keep believing, your pathway too can smooth out. Any last words or encouragement that you want to say to our listeners or watchers today?
Last words that I'll say is to whatever you're trying to do in this life, just stick to it and, set your goals. As I said, create a routine and always find yourself with people who are uplifting you and watering you instead of out in your fire. That's my word.
Subscribe, like, and share or comment below. Until next time, stay bold, stay kind, love, and light. Bye.